What's going on, people? So today this is my second video that I will be recording for you guys, and this lab will be basically setting up conditional access policies with MFA integration. And yeah, let's get right into the video. But before I start, let me just explain what's conditional access policies inside Microsoft Entra. So conditional access policies are basically automated security rules that you control whether a user can access company resources based on specific conditions. So when I think about conditional access policies, I always think about if-then statement, which basically means if this user or if this device with these specific conditions, with these specific attributes, with inside these specific groups, then we will allow or block the user, or maybe MFA implementation. We will make the user sign in with a multi-factor authentication. So this is basically what I think about when it comes to conditional access policy, and I will show you guys better with setting up the conditional access policy so you guys will understand the if-then statement, and hopefully you guys can follow through. Hopefully you guys have access to an Entra lab environment, and you guys can set it up with me and understand a little bit more when I talk about conditional access policies. And yeah, another thing that I want to explain is what's MFA, right? What's multi-factor authentication? And basically it's like the second process when you try to sign in, which basically you sign in with the email and password to your account, and then there's another process which is the multi-factor authentication, which could be any possible thing, like you set up a code that get into your personal email, and then you have to access your personal email, and then when you access your personal email, it will give you a code that you can type it into the screen and then log into your account, right? Or it could be security questions, questions that you set up for yourself, like let's say what's your favorite pet? Then you already set up the name of your favorite pet, and then when it asks you, you put in your favorite pet, right? Or it could be the Microsoft Authenticator, which is the most popular one, and basically all the companies are using it, which is basically it will give you a 2-digit code on your screen, and then once you receive that code, you go to the Microsoft Authenticator app in your phone, and most of the times it's in their phone, and then you type in the 2 digits, and then once you type in, it will basically automatically sign you in after you do that. So let's get right into the video, let's get right into the lab. Hopefully you guys can follow me through this. And yeah, if you don't have an Entra tenant lab, I would highly suggest that you guys pay for a P2 license, which costs around $10 to $12 a month. I highly recommend if you guys are interested in getting to IAM and learning Entra. So let's go right into the video, and hopefully you guys can follow through. So here my Entra tenant directory. I will show you guys some stuff before I create my conditional access policy. And one of the things that I want to show you is the authentication methods that you guys can use for your company. And as you guys can see, we have a list of them, right? Passkey 502, which will be like those hardware, security keys that are basically physical, and then you plug it into your laptop. Most of them are USB-Cs. I already worked with them, and you just basically plug it in, and then you type in your 6-digit PIN code or more that you create for yourself, and then the device the laptop, the sign-in will ask you to tap into your key to make sure that you actually have the security key right there they're asking for it. And then we have the other ones like Microsoft Authenticator, which is the Microsoft, obviously the authenticator that Microsoft created, which is the 2 digits that appear on your screen, and then you have to go to your phone, and then usually on the phone you have the authenticator app, and then you type in the 2 digits that you see on your screen, and that makes you get authenticated, right? And then SMS, right? You get a code from your phone. Temporary access pass is basically some code that you'll get for a temporary access. Hardware OS tokens, software tokens. I would say hardware OS tokens could be the same thing as passkeys, but software OS tokens is a key that could be in as a software, not a hardware, obviously. But we have a voice call. Somebody can call you, right? Microsoft can call you with a random with an agent, right, with the digital agent telling you a code so you can type in, right, email OTP, right, a one-time password that you get on your email, certificate based, pretty straightforward, right, a certificate authentication, verified ID, you know, you can have a badge or your own driver's license or whatever, and then you can authenticate with that. And then your QR code, you can, you know, scan the QR code that's in your page, that's in your screen, and then you probably the phone will make you authenticate with some stuff that you put in, some information that you put in to authenticate yourself. So these are some of the methods that you can include in your company, right? And then you have this tab right here where it says enabled, and some of them are enabled, but some of them are not enabled. I would say like the most secure ones, it would be like the pass key, because you have the security key in your hands. You're the only person who has the hardware device, so that will be a secure one, unless you obviously lose it. But if you don't lose it, you're the only person who has it, and you're the only person who can log into your account because you have the key, right? And then Microsoft Authenticator, I mean, I've been seeing that it's not really as secure as it could be, right? I've seen some breaches that happen because of Microsoft Authenticator, but we have SMS, that's not really helpful at all. We have other ones like email, that's also not that secure, because somebody could get into your email account, and then they'll try to sign into your account, and then they'll receive the email. They will obviously receive the email, and then they can sign into your account. So these are some of the ones that are not really as secure, right? And as you guys can see, there's not security questions as an option, because a hacker could go to your social media, your personal social media, and he could basically search about your life. And if you have a security question, what's your first pet, or what's your favorite pet, and then you have a dog on your page, and you have the name of the dog, and then the guy just has to like type in the name of the dog. So these are some things that are not really secure, right? But the other ones, I highly suggest that you enforce them, or your company enforces them, because they're really secure, right? Another part that I want to show you guys is if we actually go to like the conditional access tab. Let me try to find it really quick. It's right here. And then we go to named locations. This is pretty interesting too, because we can set up what's it called, secure or trusted locations that we can set up as our, you know, the locations that we trust, right? That if a user signs in from that specific location, or that specific IP address signs to this to your company, to the specific account, right, he will be trusted, right? So we can set up right here, like we can have an option to set up country locations, so we can select some countries that we trust, right? That we might have some employees that work for different that work in different countries, so we can, you know, select one of these. So let's say we want to trust people from Greece, right, Georgia, or France, right? All these basic countries, and then we can, you know, include unknown country regions, but we can name this location as France. Trusted locations, right? And then we can do a country lookup method, which is determining by GPS coordinates or IPv4, or we have the option to use also IPv6, but we include it as countries, and then we can just create it here. And then as you guys can see, where is it? Let me try to refresh it really quick. Trusted location, right? And as you guys can see, there's not a policy that has been configured yet with this trusted location. So just you guys keep aware with that. And then we also have some IP ranges, right? We can name something IP range, trusted. I mean, we can do like trusted IP range, right? And then we can mark as trusted location. Then we can just type in whatever IP you guys want to use, right? From this IP to this IP, right? And then you guys can include that as well. But that's not the main focus. Obviously, we're going to configure that inside our conditional access policy. But I just wanted to show you guys really quick about that tab because it's pretty interesting. And another thing that I want to show you guys is this tab. When you go to policies here, we can create the new policy that we will do in a second, but we can also select the new policy from a template, which means that we can basically look at all these templates, all these policy templates, and select one of them that could be the closest thing to what's the goal of the policy that we want to set up for. So we can choose like, require multi-factor authentication for only admins, right? So basically we can set up obviously multi-factor authentication for privileged administrator roles or just accounts in general. So we can choose this one. Require multi-factor authentication for Azure management. You have all these different types of templates that we can choose, like block legacy authentication, right? Some of the authentications that I showed you, some of them are legacy, some of them are older, some of them are not as secure as the new ones, so we might want to use that template. And it's pretty interesting because we have all these different tabs right here, right? We have the secure foundation, and then we have another one that says zero trust, right? Which means that always authenticate yourself, always show proof that you're the person who is signing to the things, signing to the app, signing to the resources that you want to get into. And zero trust is making sure that you sign in all the time, so that the company can make sure that this person is actually the person who needs these certain accesses. We also have something that's another template that we can actually look at, and it's the AI agents. We can set up policies for AI agents, right? Because some of the AI agents can have high permissions, and we want to make sure that they have enough permissions to do whatever they need to do. And policies would help that. Can have block high risk agents identities from accessing resources, right? So we have all these different tabs that we can look at it, and if you guys want to try them out, see what's they're about, how they're configured, right? We can come here and say view, right, and see all the summary about the policy, but we won't be getting into it. We'll just basically creating our own policy, right? So let's click OK right here, and then let's create another thing that I will show you guys after I create my new policy is the what if tool, which is pretty interesting, and which it's basically like when we create a policy, when we have a set of policies that we have already, we can use the what if tool, and we can basically describe a scenario that this thing happened with this user, and it's a high risk or user risk or whatever risk it is. And then we can basically click the button where it says what if, and then it will show us all the policies that are being triggered by the type of scenario that we create. So as you guys can see, I have some of the policies already created from other labs that I did. I even did one of them for this YouTube video, but I'll be doing another one really quick that I did before, but it wasn't really filmed. But let me do another policy. Let's create a new policy here in this tab, and then right here we can start creating our own policy. And as you guys can see, we can put a name for the policy. So let's do like something like YouTube policy, right, for the YouTube video. And then, like I mentioned before in the beginning of the video, I talked about the if then statement, which means that if this user or agent, right, or AI agent in this particular resource, app, or any other resource from Azure, from this network, right, with these conditions, right, then we can go to access control here, and then we can grant access or block access, right? And then if we're going to grant access, we might have a session, we might have a limit, right? Or how many times this user might have to log in, sign in, right? How often this user will have to do multi-factor authentication, right? So let's first go each by each, and then you guys get to get familiar with the conditional access policy. So first of all, we're here at users or agents. We can either select none, right, to include, and then we also have exclude, and then as you guys can see, we can have agents. We can use agents, but for the sake of this video, we're gonna do users and groups, and then we can do all users from our tenant, or we can select users and groups, right? We can select specifically any type of user or group, right? And then we have guest or external users, which you can create basically guest accounts, right? Or external users from other companies that get into our resources, and then they need some policies to basically prevent them to have high access to our company, so we can do that. So these are basically the guests or external users, right? Somebody from another company might just want to work in a project with my company, so I basically create a policy for them. All right. But we have also directory roles, right? We can choose any role that I mentioned already on my last video. Some of these roles that are pretty privileged, some of them are basics, but we can also include for directory roles. And then we can also do users and groups, right? We can select any user from here, from our tenant, and then any group. But for this time, I'll be selecting the PSG group, right? Soccer team, whatever, just for the sake of the video. So we selected for this group. Then we have the exclude tab, where we can basically exclude people. I'm not gonna go really into details because it's the same thing as include, but we can now exclude, which basically means that the user or the role or the guest user or the agent won't be targeted, won't be triggered by the policy. So we can do that also, as well as include. But for this video, we're just gonna keep as our group as PSG. And then with target resources, right? We can select any type of resource that we want to use as target, right? Or we can do, all resources, right? All cloud apps. We usually do a lot of policies around cloud apps, right? For basically, if this user tries to sign into this cloud app, he might be able to grant access or block access or require multi-factor authentication, right? And then we can also select resources, right, based on attributes, right? Select specific resources. We can either do some apps, right? As you guys can see, we can select some apps, but we can do all resources, all agent resources. And then we can also exclude, right? Same thing as the users, and we can also exclude. So I'm just gonna do all resources just for the sake of the video, but you guys get the idea. And then here, where I was telling you guys on the beginning of the video, the named locations, right, the trusted locations. Now we can configure here at our network tab, and then we can just select yes, and then we can just do any network location, right, anywhere in the world, or all trusted network and locations. So all those lists that I had on my named locations, I can click that, and then all of them could be targeted by this policy. All compliant network locations, right? And then we have selected networks and locations. Since I created that one, might as well just, for the sake of the video, let's do this one. And then that's the trusted location that we have that the policy will be triggered for. So conditions, this is basically, as you guys can see, we have a lot of options. It controls access based on signals from conditions like risk, device, platform, location, client apps, or device state. So this is really important, right? Because we have all these different tabs, and I will explain them. So user risk is, as you guys can see, is the likelihood that the user account is compromised. So if somebody in your company is doing some weird things, right? He's trying to access some really privileged stuff, but he's not really the type of user to do that. He doesn't have enough permissions to do that, but he's doing something weird, right? We're kind of detecting we can come here at the, where is the ID protection? We can come here at the dashboard and see that this user is doing some weird stuff, some strange stuff, and then we can apply this thing that we can set up, configure, and then high. So this policy will be targeted for this specific user that might have his account compromised. So as you guys configure these policies, you guys get to do that. I won't be able to trigger something like this because a thing that I could do is basically, if let's say I have this account and then I log in the USA, right? And then at some point, like 3 minutes later, I log in to the same account but in another country, which it means that's impossible, right? Because I'll have to get a plane and then it will be hours of traveling. So that's impossible. So the account might be compromised from this other location, this other country that signed in. So you guys get the idea. That's basically the user risk tab. And then we can also put as high, because we have levels for this. And then we can select done. And then we can do sign-in risk as well. Sign-in risk is basically the user might be trying to brute force attempt your account, and then you can see all the logs, like the user's really trying to sign into your account, guessing passwords, right? And then he might, guess the right one. So we want to use a policy that prevents it, right? So let's say we're going to do high, right? And then we can click done. So this is basically telling the policy, oh, this specific user is trying really hard to get into this account from this group. So what we're going to do with it, are we going to grant access or block access, or we're going to do multi-factor authentication? So these two parts are really important in their user risk and the sign-in risk, so keep in mind. And then we also have insider risk. I'm not going to go really deep into it, but insider risk, as you guys can see, insider risk assesses the user risky data related activity in Microsoft Purview insider risk management. So it's basically triggering most of the people that do some I would say suspicious stuff inside Microsoft Purview insider risk management, which is a really important app where it's included data and governance, so it's something to keep aware of it. I'm not going to go deep on that one, but you guys can take a look at it and search for yourselves. And then we have device platforms, which could be, so if this user from this group is a user risk and sign-in risk with this specific device, what we're going to do with this, right? So this basically device platforms, we can select our device platform. So let's select our random device platforms, and we're just going to leave Linux out of it. And so if this user from this group is trying to sign in with this specific device inside this specific app, what we're going to do with it. So that's basically device platforms. And then we have locations, which is the same thing as network, right? We already had included, so they just have it another one, and just keep that in mind. All right. And then we have client apps, which basically client apps will be, as you guys can see, we can use modern authentication clients, right? Browser, mobile apps, and desktops as our authentication client app that we sign into, right? Or we can use legacy authentication client apps, which could be something really old that it's not really as secure anymore. So we want to obviously mark these, right? So if the user is trying to sign in with these legacy authentication clients, we might want to block the access or grant access, right? Or we want to require multi-factor authentication for this specific user. But preferably we want to have all of these marked, because we want to keep the company as secure as possible. So we can hit done, right? And then filter for devices. It could be the same thing with device platforms, but we're using the same thing with real syntax, like we did in our previous video where we edited groups, right? We created rule syntaxes for groups, so users that have specific attributes, they would be included in the group because of the rule syntax. And then another part, authentication flows, basically controls how your organization uses certain authentication and authorization protocols and grants, right? We can configure device code flow, authentication transfer. I'm not going to go too deep on that. I would just want to make sure that you guys understand the most important parts of the conditional access policy. And then now we can go to our access control tab, right? Which means like the then, right? So if if all these users, right, all these attributes, all these things, with these, basically, so basically it's like this: if these users from the trying to sign into these target resources, with this network, with these IP range, or from this country, with these type of conditions, what we're gonna do with them right now, right? So this is basically the two things that we gotta focus on, because we're gonna either, if you go to the tab right here, or we're gonna either grant access but require multi-factor authentication, or we're gonna block access, which means that if I click block access, I can't really select none of these, because if I do, it's gonna go automatically to the grant access. So we can either use both of them, we can either use one of them, but since we want to make this policy and we want to try to sign in, we can grant access, right? We can maybe require multi-factor authentication, or we can require authentication string, which is basically when you go to your command prompt and then you use the force command, that's basically it, right? You're forcing somebody to use multi-factor authentication. We can use multi-factor authentication or password MFA, phishing resistant. Phishing resistant would be the FIDO2 key, because you're not logging into your email to get a code, or your SMS to get a phone code. I'm going to just leave that require authentication string, because we want to actually force the user to basically do multi-factor authentication, right? And then we can also choose other things, right? Require device to be marked as compliant, right? We want to make sure that the device that he's trying to log into is compliant to the company, right? So it's something that I could have shown you guys, a tab, which you guys can, if you guys are in IT and you guys work with Intune, you try to make sure that the device is compliant in Intune. That's what I do for my company, right? We always make sure that the laptops that we get, or we try to sign into people, are actually in Intune, right? So we want to make sure that they're marked as compliant, right? Require Microsoft Entra hybrid join device. So basically, hybrid join devices, it could either be the device could either be a joined or registered device, which means that not joined or registered device. It could either be a device that's on-prem or a device that's in the cloud, right? But we're going to require that the Microsoft Entra, a hybrid joint device, could grant or block access. And then we can also come here to these other tabs, and then we can see that there's a required password change. So whenever a user tries to sign in and then he does the multi-factor authentication, will he be prompted to do a password change, right? Is he going to be prompted to create a new password? And that's basically what's this one. So require risk remediation can only be used when a policy is assigned to all resources. So this won't be selected, but as you guys can see, users detected with risk will have all their strategies revoked. Users with password compromise will also be asked to perform a secure password change. So that's basically, if your tenant suspects that your account has been compromised, when you try to sign in, you'll be able to change your password, because if your account is compromised, you don't want another person or the same person that broke into your account use the same password and get into your account. So that's pretty much it about the grant access for multiple controls. Require all the selected controls, require one of the selected controls. So we can just do require all the selected controls, and then we can just hit select. And then for the sessions, like I mentioned to you guys, how many times will this user be able to sign in, right? How many times this user will be having to sign in, right? When you're working in your company, and then you sign into your account for the first time, and then later on it will ask you to sign in one more time, making sure that you're actually the person who's using the resources. So that's pretty much it, right? Sign in frequency, we want to do hours, and then we can do something like 5 hours. This user might have to sign in frequently. So we can also select every time, which could be we can make him sign in every time, but we can also just do hours or days, right? And let's say we want to do 5 hours to make sure that the user is actually using the actual user is actually using the resource that he needs to. And then use conditional access app control. That's mostly on Microsoft Defender for cloud apps. So I'm not gonna really mention, but you guys can see this control works for various cloud apps. But this specific policy, when we select this, this could either be configured also in Microsoft Defender for cloud apps. If you guys want to search it, I will highly recommend it. The persistent browser session, as you guys can see, this persistent browser session allows users to remain signed in after closing and reopening their browser window. So basically, when you're working and then you open a browser and then sign into that browser, but you're not using it anymore, so you just want to close it out, but then you forgot to do something, or you have another task in the same resource, and then you have to open the same tab, but it then automatically signs you in. That's basically it, right? And then customize continuous access evaluation. This is a really important one because, as you guys can read, allows access tokens to be revoked based on critical events and policy evaluation in real time rather than relying on token expiration based on lifetime. So tokens usually expire. They have a lifetime. They have a date to expire. But if continuous access evaluation sees that you're not really using something as much as you need to use, right? Or you just haven't signed in for this amount of time, right? And it's just open right there, and then you have a lot of permissions, right? You haven't changed your password or anything else. Continuous access evaluation will see, so this user hasn't been using this, right? It hasn't been signing in frequently, in this account, with this resource, he has a lot of permissions. What are we gonna do with him? Maybe we should block access, and then we try to sign in. Maybe we should require him to do multi-factor authentication, or tell his manager, hey, I don't have my sign in anymore, right? My tokens are expired. But just so you guys understand that, right? And then we have all of these other ones. We have also disable resilience defaults during an outage. Microsoft Entra will extend access to existing sessions while enforcing conditional access policy. If a policy cannot be evaluated, access is determined by resiliency settings. If resiliency defaults are disabled, access is denied once the existing session expires. So I guess this is a new feature, which basically, if there's an outage, like it said, basically the conditional access policy will be enforced, but if a policy cannot be evaluated, access is determined by resiliency settings. So I guess there's a resiliency settings that I'm not really familiar with it, but you guys can check it out. I will obviously check it out myself because I'm kind of curious right now to see what it is. But that's pretty much it. We're gonna just do select, right? And then this is another important part right here, because this setups on how the policy will be when we hit create. Is it going to be report only, which means that it's not going to be activated, but we can see the report, right? Or we're going to activate the policy when we hit create, right? Or we're just going to do the policy to be off, and then we can turn it on after, or we can just do on and then try it ourselves, and then maybe try the what if tool. And then if it's not working as the way we want to, we can shut it off and then probably delete the conditional access policy. But for this occasion, we're just gonna leave it on, and then we're gonna hit create, and then as you guys can see, it's successfully created. And then we can also now use the what if tool that I mentioned to you guys before. So we can click here, and then we can select identity types. So I would select a specific user from the specific group. I know this user, this player, this soccer player is in the PSG team, so I'm guessing he's in the PSG squad. So I'm gonna include him as the user who is from the scenario. Then target resource, we can choose a cloud app, and then we can select the cloud app, because since we select all resources, so all cloud apps are mentioned, and then we can just select the cloud app, whatever you want to select. Let's do my apps, right? Let's do this, and then we can select the device and platform. The only one that we haven't selected was Linux, so we can choose whatever up to use the other ones. I'm gonna select Mac OS because I have it. Why not? And then client app, he's trying to sign in with this legacy client, client app. And then for authentication flow, we haven't selected neither of them, so it doesn't really matter. Inside risk, we haven't selected any of them, but sign-in risk we selected high, and then user risk we also selected high. And then we can select the country, right, that he's trying to sign in, or IP address. Since we selected those countries that were trusted location, we can do France because that was the one that we selected. I forgot to mention that we have to include an IP address when we're selecting a country, because we got to be really specific. So I searched it up, give me a random IP address from France. So I just selected this IP address, and then now we can basically do the what if tool, right? And it actually makes sense because France, PSG, right, Paris Saint-Germain, and then we have the player from it, so it makes sense a lot. And we can see now that the policy, that the test, that the YouTube, which one was it? Okay, the YouTube policy that we created before has been triggered by this scenario that we created with the what if tool. And then as you guys can see, we have it right here. So that's basically the what if tool. Pretty interesting. You guys can test it out to see if the policy that you created is being triggered the right way with the right scenario. So basically that's pretty much it about conditional access policy, right? We with MFA implementation, right? We can select the sign-in logs, right, or audit logs, and you'll see that the conditional access policy has been added, right, has been created. And then that's basically it about conditional access policy. This is the video. This is conditional access policy. Hope you guys understand a little bit on how to configure it. Hopefully you guys were following through. Maybe you guys were doing the lab with me, and then maybe understanding yourselves how conditional access policy works and how multi-factor authentication works, right? It's really important that you guys understand, if you're trying to get into IAM, it's really important that you guys understand conditional access policy in Entra, because this plays a big part in making sure that your company is really secured, right? So yeah, that's pretty much it. Make sure you guys leave a comment on what you guys want me to record next, right? It's either how to pass a certain certification that I have, or could do other types of labs and projects, ideas that you guys can do inside IAM. Make sure you guys leave that comment, and it's going to be really supportive, and I will try my best to do what you guys are asking the most. So see you guys next. Thank you very much for watching, and yeah, that's it.